And then then he comes back. He says, and once we teach them and make disciples, he said, then also teach them to observe all things. And so the process of teaching them to observe all things is very critical to becoming what God would have us to be. Without that teaching, we fail to become what God wants us to be. And that's become difficult, not only among our young, but the whole church. When you have people obey the gospel and then they don't attend training, they can't become what they need to be. Yes, you've been baptized, but if you treat it only as if you got wet, then that's the only thing you have. You have gotten wet because you haven't fulfilled the second part of the commandment. The second part of that commandment tells us to teach them to observe. So if they're not around to be taught to observe, all they did was get wet. So you have to do the whole thing. In order, if you want the full results that God promised, we have to do the whole thing, don't we? So when we read Matthew 28, 18 and 19, there's some critical foundational teaching that's within that text that demands us to pay close attention. And I think what happens is once we obey the gospel, we lose sight of that quickly, or Satan comes somehow and causes us not to give that the consideration that he needs. Satan knows that God is talking to us. And his thing is he don't mind you listening to God, he just don't want you to obey him. And so when Jesus tells us this, let's look at that for a minute and break that down, and we'll go right into this here. In Matthew 28, starting at 18, it said, and Jesus came and spake unto them. Now this is after he had died and he rose again. The third day after he had died and rose again. Because it talks about that and so verse 16 says, and then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee, into a mountain where Jesus had appointed them. And when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and spake unto them, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. So all his disciples, these 11 men came. And it's interesting to know that they had been with Jesus 3.5 years. It's interesting to know that they had seen him put on that cross. They saw him die. They knew that he was put in the grave. And when they saw him, they still didn't believe. They doubted. Some doubted. How do you doubt what you witness, what you hear with your own ears and see with your own eyes? But some of those 11 men doubted. So, for people to say today, we would never be like they were, we've already acting like they act. When we deny doing what he says, we're doing just what they did. Yes. Yeah. 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 And see, that's why the Bible tells, blessed are those who have not seen but yet believe. Because if there could be people that there and see and not believe, but yet there are people that never saw him and believe, they're the ones that are truly blessed. And so these men, they saw him, but like you said, all of them didn't believe. But he gave them a command. Everybody there, whether they believed or they had doubted, everybody had to obey what he had said. And so, but sometimes when people obey the gospel and they baptize, and I've heard people say this, I was baptized, but I didn't feel anything. And I remember when we was at one of our other congregations, we had a brother that always jumped up and do the baptism, but nobody wanted him to do baptisms. Because when he gets you in the water, he hold you under the water. He push you down there, and you be fighting to get out. And he said, I want to make sure that God took all the sin out. So you be that, because you better hold your breath. You better hold your breath 15, 20 seconds, After a while, you will start feeling like you need some air. And the water looked like a bunch of piranhas in it because he's holding you down. And people get it. One lady got up there. It was sad. One lady died so long. And when she got up, first thing she said, what the hell are you doing? You trying to kill me? You trying to kill me? I was like, oh, Lord. Because, but he said he felt like they still had sin in them, so he was trying to make sure the sin got out of them. And so the brother said, now don't let him do baptism no more because he going to drive somebody. Brother Glenn, we're glad that you know how to do baptism. You don't hold them down there and they come up and fight. and so when she kept, but he wanted to make sure she had no doubt when she felt something when she came up. She felt like he tried to kill her, right? So she felt something. But there are folks who say they didn't feel anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Oh yeah. People who don't swim. People who don't swim, they'll do that to you. They'll just cause it harder. But regardless of what it was, when they got in that water and they were baptized, they had a command on them. Whether they had doubts or whether they did not have doubts, they had a command on them. And Jesus gave them that command. He said, all the power that resides in heaven and all the power that resides in the earth are mine. And then he told them to go. He said, go therefore, teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. So when they obeyed, when Jesus rose and gave those 11 men that command to go, to teach the nations and to make disciples of them, and to do it in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, they had a command. Regardless of what they felt or thought, they had a command to obey. And so that's the command that on us. So when we have people who obey the gospel and they come up and say, well, I didn't feel anything. So what? You've obeyed the gospel. Now you must keep God's command. Because Jesus said, why call me Lord and do what? Not the things I say. If I'm going to be your Lord, you have to obey me. You have to do what I say. But some people, they get out the water and they just start doing what they want to do. They don't take him serious. Yeah, you're the Son of God, but I don't feel like I have to. We don't have the right to inject our feelings into his command, do we? But people will inject their feelings into his command and start altering God's command and start doing things according to what they feel like. And so when they start doing things to what they feel like, well, now all of a sudden, I don't feel like I need to go to church today. It's enough for them out there to take care of God's work. I had brothers who would tell me that we would go visit them after church when we checked the church rolls and they missed Sunday. We missed you today, bro. Well, man, I was just out of it today. It was enough for y'all out there to take care of the Lord's work. You don't get to make that decision because you're not the Lord, But people will make decisions for God, and they ought not. And so that's why the Bible teaches us we have to be careful not to sit in God's judgment seat. When we start talking like that, we put ourselves in God's judgment seat. And do we have all we need to truly be a judge? And so we have to be careful, but that's the devil telling us, oh, you can make that decision. You don't have to do this right here, just like he did Eve. He's still whispering to us today, just like he did Mother Eve. He never stopped. And many times we will listen, not that we purposely want to listen to him, but our flesh is speaking to us and he's speaking to us. And together, between him and our flesh, we make our soul obey. Instead of the soul having the strength to resist them and do what God say, we let that prevail. And that's what we do. And so when we do that, now we're operating outside of our master's command. He commanded them to go. He commanded them to teach the nations. He commanded them to baptize them. He commanded them that after they baptized, they would become disciples. And then after that, he commanded them now, after you done taught them what they need to know to obey the gospel, now you got to turn around and teach them to observe the ordinances, the commands. And so the ordinances and commands that come after that, we have to learn how to obey. And so that's what we call the second teaching. And when you get to the second teaching, he said that they observe all things. So whatever he said, we got to obey all things. Whatsoever I have commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the world. Jesus said, I'm with you. As you are my servant, brothers and sisters, I am with you. And then that's where the real hard question come in. Are we like those folks that doubted when they saw Jesus? Do we doubt and say, oh, Lord, are you really with me? Is you really watching over me? You know, because if he's really with me, he's really watching over me, don't you think I'm going to order my steps in the Lord? I'm going to be careful what I do in the face of God, because I know that he said he's with me. His eyes on me. Remember 1 Peter 3:12, that the eyes of the Lord is over the righteous, and his ears is open to their prayers. So when he said the eyes of the Lord is open, his ears open, he's saying that I'm omnipotent, I'm everywhere. I'm omnipotent, I see everything, and I'm omnipresent, I'm everywhere. So if God is all these things, and we believe in our heart to know in our heart that it's true, how then do we behave the way we do before him? You know, you think about it, we give our parents more respect than that. When we want to be bad, do we try to be bad around them? Or do we wait to get away from mom and dad to be bad? Yeah, we wait to get away from them. Where they can't see us, then we be bad. But God is always present, and knowing that he's present, we ought to behave ourselves in such a way where he sees us. Now we're able to set proper example. We're able to encourage one another when knowing that he sees that I'm living that life now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and so that's why when Anna read the last sentence in there after Matthew 6:33 say, must be learned and lived. That's a powerful little 3 words: learn and live. That's where we have our problem at, don't we? Learning and living. And that's going to always be Achilles' heel to many of us, is learning and living. It's one thing to read the Bible, and we all know people who have read the Bible in and out of the church. When I was in prison, I had guys who told me they read the Bible. One guy, he had been there 21 years. He had read the Bible 48 times, from Genesis to Revelation. But guess what? He still wasn't a Christian. He read it. And I said that's admirable that you read, but it's more important that you obey what you read. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where things fall apart. We have young people that the text is talking about to encourage young men and women to go into ministry. The reason they don't go into ministry, they see, Sister Sykes, you will say something? Yeah, okay. Mm. Studying it is better. Isn't that what Paul told Timothy? 2 Timothy 2:15. How often do we say 2 Timothy 2:15? All the time, right? Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that need not be made ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So Paul's instruction to us is not to read, but to study. And so that's what he said about the Bereans. The Bereans was more noble than those of Thessalonica, who sent out the Macedonian call and said, come over here and help us. They called for Paul to help, but then they didn't want to do the work. They wanted Paul to do all the work. But Paul, when he was in Berea, he found folks there that was willing to do the work. The men of Berea, for they searched the scriptures daily. They didn't read, they didn't just read, they searched out the scriptures. They studied to see if the things that Paul was advocating, was it true? Because you got to realize what Paul was saying was brand new to the ears of people of his age. They had heard about the prophecy, the revelation that they had gotten about Jesus. That prophecy about Jesus. The Old Testament was revelation in their age because it had not came to fulfill. They had heard about it. But it's just like revelation to us today is something that we study, but it has not come to fruition yet. Jesus, during their age, had not came to fruition. He had not came into existence. And so he came to existence in that very moment. And so they're struggling to go back and say, wait a minute now. All our lives, all our parent lives, all their lives, they heard about this Messiah that was going to rule over the government would be upon his shoulder. And to him should the Gentiles turn. We've read about this here, but Paul is saying that this stuff doesn't happen. And Paul said that, but it happened like this. Could it be? So they said, we better go check it out for ourselves. So they went back and they started looking. The Jews, they went back and they started looking. And when they went back and started looking, they said, well, wait a minute. Then the Bible said that the Messiah was supposed to come out of Jerusalem. But he came out of Egypt. See, they missed the point that Herod was trying to kill him. Herod was killing all the baby boys, remember? Because when the three wise men came, and Herod told them, said, when y'all find him, y'all come back and tell us. And because we want to go worship him too. Herod wanted to make sure he killed, because there couldn't be another king. And so the wise men, after they saw Jesus, they went out another way. So the Jews thinking, hey, if he was really the Messiah, he would have did this, just like the book say. He did that, but in the context of real life. In real life, there was folks trying to kill him. So therefore, God sent them into Egypt. And then the Bible said the prophets also told him, out of Egypt I should call my son. So God left hints for them that don't just look at this one perspective, consider the whole. When you consider the whole, then you start understanding. God is saying something's going to happen in this time. Something's going to happen in this environment. And when something happens in this time and environment, this is what's going to happen. You're going to find him, but he's going to come out of Egypt. And then he's going to go to an obscure place. And the obscure place he went to was to Nazareth. Why did he go to Nazareth? You remember what Nathan said about Nazareth? Yeah, if you're going to hide, you don't want to hide in a nice, clean, popular place. You want to hide with a bunch of people in trouble, a bunch of people that do stuff that may not necessarily be considered kosher, because nobody really wants to be around them, right? Where the thugs hang out, you don't want to be where the thugs hang out, because you know some bad stuff going to happen over there. But you want to be here where the good folks are. And so they put Jesus over there where the bad folks were doing stuff, because ain't nobody going to look for him there. And he was able to grow up. He was able, and because nobody knew that to look for him over there, he had a chance. He had a chance to avoid the devil finding out and trying to destroy God's work. See, because Satan was there trying to defeat God's purpose, right? And when Satan trying to defeat God's purpose, Satan tried to cut you off from every corner. He see which way you're going, and he wants to put a stumbling block in your way. So here Jesus, and these Jews was trying to figure it out. So that's what Paul said, the Bereans, they put the time in, they put the study in to see and understand, yes, this was a Messiah, because all the markers was there. All the things that he was to do was there. So they had all the things that when he came, because the thing was the Messiah was going to come, he was going to set up his kingdom, and from the time Jesus started preaching, he started preaching the kingdom of heaven, right? And when he went to Pilate, when he told Pilate, where did he say his kingdom was at? Not of this world. My kingdom is not in competition with you, Pilate, but my kingdom is in competition with the world. It's not, you're insignificant in this story. And so that's why Pilate could come with Pilate and say, I don't find no problem with the man. If he's saying something against y'all religion, y'all deal with it. They couldn't put a hand on Jesus, and so they made stuff up. They made stuff up in order to attack him. And that's why the Bible said we have to be the kind of example where folks can see us living right and doing right, so then we can inspire other people to want to live and do right. So how are we going to get young men and women according to the number 10 down here, how are we going to get young men and women wanting to go into ministry when they're surrounded by all this bad stuff and it's coming out of the church? If it's coming out of the church, nobody wants to be a part of that. They say, well, you know, I had something to do with this, I had something to do with that. They don't want no part of that because it's coming out of the church. And so get these young men and women acclimated and wanting to participate in ministry, you got to set the right atmosphere. And you got to have genuine people who are willing to put in the work to guide them along so that they will have a chance, you have a chance to draw some into that direction. But they have to be willing to do what the Bible said. That's why that command that Jesus gave us, that golden text of the Bible to go into the world, that's the test. If our young people don't see us doing what God say, why would they want to do what God say? Why would they take it serious that if mom and dad is not serious about obeying God's command, why should I be? You know? And so when I get up on Sunday morning, I don't mind telling mom and dad, I don't feel like going to church today. Why can I say that? Because they're not going. Since mom and dad, y'all don't feel like going, why should I go? So we have to be the one to set the example. And Benita and I, we ensured that regardless how we felt, we was in the Lord's house because we had a son and a daughter to raise up and to teach them. Now, our job was to get them grown. We lived, we set the proper example for them so that they would know the right way to go. And then it becomes up to them. Now, when they got grown, they began to be seduced by the secularness of the world, you know, and started saying, well, you know, I go to church, but I don't want to go there with y'all because my friend church, they have more fun. I feel more fulfilled at my friend church. See, the concept of religion is ingrained in them, but now they're going somewhere else because they're saying, I looked at y'all, mom and dad, and the people over there just doesn't inspire me. And that's a problem for us. It's something that we ought to take notice of, you know, because afterward, if I'm here and everybody's telling me, Brother Sykes, I'm having a problem with Brother Sykes, I'm having a problem with that, and I'm thinking, oh, that's y'all. No, I need to stop and look at me because then it may be something going on with me. But if I'm being prideful, if I'm being arrogant, then I'm going to put the finger on you all and say, no, the problem ain't with me. You know, I'm just, you know, that's their problem. But if I have the Spirit of God in me, like Paul said, I will always be in that place where let me examine myself. Let me make sure that I'm in the faith that God would have me to be in. Because I got people who are dependent on me, who are watching me, who are evaluating me all the time. And I got to be like Paul said, I got to be ready and set for the defense of the gospel. If you see me do this or you see me do that, what is the reason this is happening? I got to be able to defend my actions at all times because I'm setting an example. So when I'm gone, so whoever come behind ought to be able to use that as an example of what they need to do in the church family when situations arise in the church family and the church need to do this or do that. Like when we decided that we needed to improve our building for years, we talked about it. And then I said, well, I said we need to find a way to motivate us as a whole. So we put together a plan. We put up our hourglass there. We kept talking about the hourglass and money we raised. And eventually people started, everybody didn't come on at the same time. We had 3 or 4 people. After a while, we had another person come on. After a while, we had several people. And then after a while, we had the majority of the congregation giving $5, $10, whatever. And we was able to raise the money. And then look what we was able to do. But we couldn't, I realized I couldn't just sit there and wait for everybody to make up their mind. We had to start. So I said, we got to start. I'll start with me. So I started setting an example. Everybody else came aboard, and then we all was able to do this together, and look where we are now. So we're able to upgrade our building and bring value to this building. So now our building on the economics table is worth over $300,000. You know, so we probably get $350,000 for this building. At one time, when the guy came, we could only get $98,000. So we have done a great work financially in here. Spiritually, we got a lot of work to do. So when we pray that we grow financially, physically, and spiritually, there's a lot of work to be made. And young people need to be part of that process. So as they grow up and they decide to go in ministry, they know part of the process is we got to be financially able to pay our bills because we live in a world where Jesus says, give unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. And so if you're going to be in this building, there's some money that Caesar's going to get out of you. Caesar's going to get the money for that light bill. Caesar's going to get that money for that water bill, ain't he? You know, you ain't going to have no lights, you ain't going to have no water. Yeah. And so Caesar's going to get that money from us members as we work. He's going to get his taxes. So these things are going to happen. And that's government. And so we have to satisfy the business side of the church as well as the spiritual side of the church. And the young people need to learn that there's two sides to the church. There's a spiritual side and there's a physical side of the church that must be taken care of. So when they learn that, now they can come along. They could be better prepared to deal with the future that we leave them with. But if they're not prepared, want to look at others and say, well, they never trained us to do this. They never trained us to do that. Then the blame is on us. When we stand in judgment with God, God's question is going to be, why didn't y'all do what I told you to do? I told you to teach. I told you to teach them all things, not some of the things, all things, and I'll be with you, Lord, to the end of the world. So we have a great responsibility to do what God said. And the responsibility falls on the shoulder of every member. But when we decide, well, now I'm not going to show up, I'm not going to do, one person affects the whole. I know that old song that you say, one bad apple don't spoil the whole bunch, but yes, it does. You leave it in there long enough, it'll spoil it. Same thing with an orange. You see a bad orange, you leave it in there long enough, it's going to spoil the other ones. And so you have to be able, as a whole, to influence the whole and get as much work out of everybody for the Lord that they can do. And because some people come to the point and they'll look at everybody and they'll say, well, you know, I'm not as good as Sister Jenny. I'm not as good as Sister Mary. So I'm just going to sit over here. No, we have to let there's something that person can do to be assistant to the whole. You know, if you, like some people say, well, I'm just too old and I can't go. Well, you can talk. Ain't nothing wrong with your mouth. Pick up that phone and call somebody. You know, and that's what we have to be about, encouraging each other to do what we can do so that we could be an example. And so even though we might go, we can call somebody. And little Jimmy over here who's growing up, see members from the church coming over to help his folks out who are struggling. That speaks to him. My church family came. My church family did this right here. And my church family took me here. My church family was a part of this. You know, and that's critical. But when I was a little boy, when the church member took us to Alligator Alley and all these different places, Jesse, and being together, we get in fellowship. You know, they took us out to parks where we had picnic, we had church picnic, and we got to know people better than just sitting in the church building. We start personalizing and getting closer. Then after a while, we're eating together. We're going to have family dinner over to Sister Mary this week. We're going to have family dinner over to Sister Sykes. Now we just all together all over the place. We're just one people all together. And so that's what God will have us to be. But we have to start creating that atmosphere for it to take place in. Without that proper atmosphere, it's not going to grow. So we have a great work to do to be able to grow young men and women and then grow them to the point that now we got somebody that it has a mind towards God and they want to go to a Christian school, and we can recommend them to Christian schools where they can grow, you know. And so that's our process. So, but when we look at this here, we can see that. And the last thing here was Matthew 6:33. The Bible tells us that God will give us everything we need. And see, that's where those folks who had doubt, when you start seeing God fulfill his promise, that removes the doubt, don't it? When God steps in his time and he starts doing this, you know, okay, I didn't think God was going to come through, but the Lord came through for me. Then before you know it, here you are with a testimony. You telling everybody just how good God is. And now somebody else want to have that experience that you have. And they'll start talking to you. Once those relationships are built up, once you start expressing and talking about what God has done for you, then others will hear that. And see, that's one of the things that you see. We used to beat people up in the secular world for saying something about God's blessing them, about testimony for God and all this right here. We used to beat them up. But when you think about it, we were doing the wrong thing, because that's what Paul did. Paul rehearsed the testimony of what happened to him with Jesus. And when you rehearse the testimony of what happened to you through Jesus, that's not wrong. That's what God expects, for you to give him praise, to give him the credit. But if we hold the credit back and don't give it to him, then God can't shine. You won't let God shine. And we have to be able to let God shine in this world so people can know that we serve a good God and he takes care of us. No matter what's going on, we can count on him. But I want to thank everybody for sitting patiently and being a part of the class this morning. We want to adjourn right now so that we can prepare for our morning service, and you all can practice the love piece that you talk about to greet each other and encourage each other.
Life can be busy, but when you enroll in Kroger Boost, it's like getting a savings superpower. Save up to $650 per year with unlimited free delivery, on top of 2 times fuel points. Save the day with Boost from Kroger. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Why did no one tell Florida drivers about this new rule?
All right, if you're currently insured, you drive.
This video was uploaded by Humble is the Way.
Well, I'm in Jesus. Can't talk about me no more. Well, let me tell you why. Now listen, y'all. You see, when I think about my life, when I truly met Jesus, well, you might say, boy, you've been to the church all your whole life. But when I truly met Jesus, my friends start talking about me. That's when I smiled and said this. Hey, you say you know all about me. You better think again. And you say that you know all about my past. But all have seen. See, I've been changed by the blood of the Lamb, and He's made me whole again. Well, somebody in Jesus, Jesus, He washed away my sins. Let me tell you, I'm somebody in Jesus. You can't talk about me no more. Well, let me tell you why. You can't hurt me no more, because now I've been renewed, church, and my soul has been clean. Let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus. Because now I need a gospel preacher to step up to the mic and tell us about it. The church is full of sanctified souls who were lost in the soul of sin. We were liars, cheaters, backstabbers, living in a world of fear. Till the preacher came and showed us the way. Now we are saved by amazing grace. You too can be somebody in Jesus. If you will trust and obey, let me tell you I'm a somebody. You can't talk about me no more. Hey, I'm somebody. You can't hurt me no more. No more, I've been reached. My soul has been. Let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus. Lord, because I've been y'all. Let me tell you how I became somebody. I heard the word. I believe what I heard. Made up my mind to change my direction. I repented of all of my sins. I didn't mind letting the world know. I'll confess Jesus, cause he is my king. And at that time, y'all, I was ready to go down in the water, y'all. And that means when I came up, I was somebody. When I came up, I was somebody. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of King Jesus. I can walk right, I can talk right, I can sing right. He gave me a new song to sing. He gave me a new prayer to pray. Yes, he did. You can't talk about me no more. But let me tell you what, somebody, you can't hurt me no more. No more. Because of what did bring you. Oh, the Lord in my soul. Let me tell you, somebody, go. I need some help. Somebody, in Jesus. I've been saved, sanctified, in Jesus. When you talk about me, it just don't hurt like it. Oh, no. I found myself going down on bended knee. But it ain't me, it's Jesus, it's Jesus living in me.
As threats and anti-Semitism spread around the world,